today we'll be discussing resurrection. Resurrection. What an amazing prospect that we can potentially see our loved ones again. Um, to get into this discussion, let's take a look at First Kings chapter 17, verse 17. This is First Kings chapter 17, verse 17. This way we can see the situation of Elijah, who was a prophet of the true God. First Kings chapter 17. And God sent Elijah to visit a widow, the widow of Zarephath. And this widow had only one son, no other living family. And Elijah was there assisting the widow with things. And suddenly, without warning, her son, her only family member, died. At verse 17, 1 Kings 17:17, it says, After these things, the son of the woman who owned the house fell sick, and his sickness became so severe that he stopped breathing. At this, she said to Elijah, What do you have against me, O man of the true God? Have you come to remind me of my guilt and to put my son to death? But he said to her, Give me your son. Then he took him from her arms and carried him up to the roof chamber where he was staying. And he laid him on his own bed. And he called out to Yahweh, O Yahweh, my God, are you also bringing harm to the widow with whom I am staying by putting her son to death? And he stretched himself out over the child 3 times and called out to Yahweh, O Yahweh, my God, please let this child's life come back into him. Yahweh listened to Elijah's request, and the life of the child came back into him, and he revived. Elijah took the child and brought him down from the roof chamber into the house and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, See, your son is alive. At that, the widow said to Elijah, Now I know that you truly are a man of God, and that Yahweh's word in your mouth is true. Isn't that a heart-warming story? It's touching. Understanding her situation as having no living family, only having her son. And now her son dies. And now she feels like she's lost everyone that was dear to her. And then when she goes to the prophet, Elijah, the man of the true God, then Elijah performs a miracle. And this miracle is what you call a resurrection, to bring a person back to life. There is no one in the universe who has the ability to bring a person back to life outside of Yahweh, the most high, most powerful God in the universe. And he even bestows this ability upon his prophets of old. And when Jesus was on earth, Jesus was also able to perform resurrections, right? In fact, we can take a look at some examples of this at Mark chapter 5, verse 41. Mark chapter 5, verse 41. Here he has a child of an army officer, and this army officer came to Jesus asking for help. And at 41, it says, then taking the hand of the child, he said to her, Talitha Kumi, which when translated means, little girl, I say to you, get up. And immediately the girl rose and began walking. She was 12 years old. And at once they were beside themselves with great ecstasy. But he ordered them again and again, let no one learn of this. He said that something should be given to her to eat. So here Jesus performs a miracle. Everyone is rejoicing. And he says, don't tell anyone I did this. That's an interesting request, isn't it? But we know that when Jesus was on earth, he had a ministry to fulfill. And sometimes these resurrections that he was performing were unplanned. It's because he has the heart, the empathy to help others who are in need and looking for his assistance, so he would help them. But for him to perform a resurrection that could become very big news, and it would anger his opposers and intensify their efforts to kill him, he of course was willing to sacrifice his life, but it needed to happen at the right time. So Jesus would tell people to keep some of his miracles low key. Please don't feel the need to advertise this everywhere right now. I did this for you, and shows really his motivation was not fame. His motivation was really to help people. But what's bigger here is he's demonstrating the power of God's kingdom. He's demonstrating the power of God. He's sending a message to you, his followers in the future, to let you know that death has no power over him. He has the ability to resurrect. God has the ability to bring back those you may have lost. And that wasn't the only time. If you look at Luke chapter 7, and verse 12, Luke 7:12. There it says, as he got near the gate to the city, why, look, there was a dead man being carried out, the only son of his mother. Besides, she was a widow. A considerable crowd from the city was also with her. Verse 13, when the Lord caught sight of her, he was moved with pity for her, and he said to her, stop weeping. With that, he approached and touched the bear, and the bearers stood still. Then he said, young man, I say to you, get up. And the dead man sat up and started to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Now fear seized them all, and they began glorifying God, saying, a great prophet has been raised among us, and God has turned his attention to his people. And this news concerning him spread into all Judea and the surrounding country. This one Jesus wasn't able to keep a secret. News spread when he performed this resurrection. But again, notice how much this must have meant to the widow, who also may not have had other children, but she had this one son. This son would be her only means of support, perhaps, in the time that she lived. And now to lose this son, it's devastating. It's devastating. And Jesus sees the situation and performs a resurrection. So when you lose someone in death, from the heavenly perspective, God and his son, Jesus, are not happy to see someone has died. Death is not a good thing. You'll hear people say death is a part of life. But death really is not natural, because Adam and Eve would not have died if they didn't sin against God. Let that sink for a moment. Death is actually not natural for humans, because Adam and Eve would have never died if they had not sinned against God. Death is now a result of sin and imperfection. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 26 calls death an enemy. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 26. There it says, and the last enemy, death, is to be brought to nothing. By means of his kingdom, Yahweh will destroy death in itself. It will be brought to nothing, but it acknowledges to us death as an enemy. It robs us of children, parents, spouses. It can happen unexpectedly. We view it as a tragedy, rightly so. It is an enemy. It is not natural or part of life for humans. It is a curse that we have as a result of sin and imperfection. But soon there will be a time where we will live on earth without having to worry about dying. Death will be brought to nothing. When God's kingdom comes to this planet and Jesus is ruling as the king of this planet, he having the power to resurrect means that we won't have to worry about death at all. And what about those who already have died? Well, Jesus already demonstrated that he can resurrect them, and so he will give a resurrection on a mass scale when he is the king over this planet Earth. We see the proof of this at Acts chapter 25, verse 15. We're looking at Acts chapter 25, and in verse 15, it says, oh, I apologize. I wrote down the wrong scripture. Let's go to John 5:28 and 29. That's John 5:28 and 29. There it says, do not be amazed at this, for the hour is coming in which all those in the memorial tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who did good things to a resurrection of life, those who practice vile things to a resurrection of judgment. So here it says that there will come a time when all those who are dead, all those who are in their memorial tombs will hear the voice of Jesus and come out. So there will be a resurrection, but this time it will be on a grand scale. All of those who died will actually hear the voice of Jesus and come out. Now imagine what that will be like. You living on earth in paradise under God's kingdom rule, and there is perhaps a scheduled resurrection. And so some of your loved ones are being brought back to life. And so you have the opportunity then to be able to meet them, talk to them, get to know them. How would you feel to be able to see your loved ones be brought back to life? In addition to this, it says that those who are brought back to life, because it's all those in the memorial tombs, that are going to come out. That's what it says at verse 28. All those in the memorial tombs are going to come out. So that means that some of the people could be resurrected who don't have good hearts. So what will happen to them? Well, it mentions a resurrection of judgment. So that resurrection of judgment means that they will get the chance to prove who they are, to live here on the earth. And then after the 1,000 years, when Satan is let loose, they will be destroyed along with Satan. Satan will actually mislead some of these individuals who don't have a good heart, and they will prove to be false. And so they will die as a result. From then on, we live in peace on earth. Can you imagine the conditions that you would live in? Not having to worry about death, being able to see your ancestors alive, to be able to talk to them. We can go back generations to all of those that it says all those in the memorial tombs will be resurrected. So, how far back could this really go? We can talk about people from history that would be resurrected then, that we would see in this time. Is there anyone from history that you would like to meet, you would like to talk to or hear speak? Any Bible characters that you would like to meet, talk to, hear speak, to hear their stories, to get details of some of the accounts that you read in the Bible? All those in the memorial tombs will come out. If we go back to the book of Acts, we want to look at 24:15. I apologize. We're going to Acts 24:15. There it says, "And I have hope toward God, which hope these men also look forward to, that there is going to be a resurrection of both the righteous and the unrighteous." So here it distinguishes those who are going to be resurrected, saying the righteous and the unrighteous. So what is the difference here? Well, of course, those who are righteous would be those who are practicing the things in the Bible in their life, who know the truth and live by it. So those who are unrighteous then would be those who don't necessarily know the truth and therefore do not live by it. So if you're concerned that someone in your past who died may not get a resurrection because they never got to study the Bible the way you're studying the Bible now, they never got to know the truth the way you're learning the truth now, you don't have to believe that you will never see them again. That's why specifically here, that's Acts 24:15, it says there's going to be a resurrection of both the righteous and the unrighteous. So people will get a chance. People who never learned will get the chance to live on this earth in peace and get to know God and study the Bible. They will have the opportunity to prove who they truly are outside of mental illness, outside of crime and disease and poverty, outside of the influence of Satan, the devil. They will get a chance. But it's important to understand as we read these ideas of a resurrection, people coming out of memorial tombs, the righteous and the unrighteous being resurrected, to understand what exactly we're talking about. Like, where is all this going to happen? Many churches teach that when you die as a good person, then that means that you go to heaven. But is that true? Is it true that a good person, when he dies, just simply automatically goes to heaven? Well, the Bible answers this question quite clearly. You see, the very concept of people just dying and going to heaven was unheard of amongst Christians or Jews. This is a concept that actually originated in Babylonish teachings, the teachings of the Greeks and the Romans. If we look at John chapter 3, verse 13, we see evidence of just that. John chapter 3 and verse 13. There it says, moreover, no man has ascended into heaven, but the one who descended from heaven, the Son of Man. Hold on. Let's read that again. It says, no man has ascended into heaven except for Jesus. There was never any person who died and went to heaven. It's right here in the Bible. Before Jesus, there was never any person who died and went to heaven. No man had ascended into heaven. So when we talk about this resurrection, those coming out of the memorial tombs, it's important to understand that we're talking about here on earth. People will live again. When Jesus performed his miracles, he didn't say, "Oh, I resurrected your daughter. She's in heaven. Don't worry, you'll see her when you get there." No, he resurrected them to life here on earth. Did you notice that when he would bring the children back, they would come back here on earth, and the people would rejoice. When Elijah resurrected the son of the widow, he didn't say, "Oh, your son's in heaven." He didn't send the son to heaven. He resurrected the son here on earth, and the widow rejoiced. In fact, these resurrections would have been cruel if these people were in heaven. Think about it. You brought them back to be poor again on earth and to live with their widow of a mother here on earth. When they were in heaven in the presence of God, and then whatever you imagine heaven to be in mighty spirit form, floating on clouds in it. No, those concepts do not originate in the Bible. The Bible teaches that before Jesus, there was not anyone who went ascended to heaven. Interesting, right? So does the Bible say that the earth belongs to the righteous people in the end? Yes. Psalm 37, verse 29. There it says, the righteous will possess the earth, and they will live forever on it. That's Psalm 37, 29. The righteous will possess the earth. The earth was made for God's children. That's what the earth was made for. It was not made for rebellious children. It was not made for Satan, the devil. It was made for us. And we will have it again. We will have our inheritance, but we need to be patient and allow God's kingdom to come and solve the problems that mankind is facing here on earth. But please know this is your home, and you have a lot to look forward to in terms of the mass resurrection that is going to happen on this planet, to be able to see our ancestors, our dead loved ones, even those historical figures again, to be able to connect with them. It is a wonderful, wonderful prospect. One of the most famous resurrections in the Bible is in the book of John. It's the resurrection of Lazarus. This was one that probably accelerated the efforts of Jesus' enemies in destroying him, because it became undeniable when Jesus resurrected Lazarus. He became undeniable as the Messiah, the Son of God. And so his enemies had no choice in their minds but to kill him. And so they did. But at John verse chapter 11, at John chapter 11, it shows Jesus visiting the tomb of Lazarus, and their family friends are gathered outside. Mary and Martha Lazarus' sisters are beside themselves because Lazarus has died and he's in this tomb. At verse 38, this is John 11:38. It says, Then Jesus, after groaning again in himself, this was after Jesus gave way to tears, right there. It says, after groaning again within himself, came to the tomb. It was, in fact, a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, Take the stone away. Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, Lord, by now he must smell, for it has been 4 days. And Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? So they took the stone away. And Jesus raised his eyes heavenward and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. True, I knew that you always hear me, but I spoke on account of the crowd standing around so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said these things, he cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the man who had been dead came out with his feet and hands bound in wrappings, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, Free him and let him go. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to Mary, who saw what he did, put faith in him. But some of them went off to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. What an amazing miracle. But we notice the feelings that Jesus had. He was groaning within himself. He gave way to tears on this occasion. Jesus doesn't take death lightly. Even though he was going to perform a miracle, it hurts him to see that you are experiencing loss when someone dies that you love. It hurts him to know that people are suffering, but he's moved to take action on our behalf. He's giving us a reason to put faith in him. This miracle is undeniable. There were hundreds of observers. I repeat, this miracle is undeniable. This is a historical fact. There were hundreds of observers there. They couldn't even say that Jesus didn't do this. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. They just had to kill him. They had no way of spinning this situation. There were hundreds of people who saw this resurrection. It was undeniable. And people began to put faith in Jesus as a result of what they saw. So what about you? Do you have faith in Jesus? Do you believe that he will perform a resurrection? Do you rejoice in thinking about what it will be like living under his kingdom rule on this planet? In peace, in paradise, in harmony with nature, with the animals, with each other. It's a beautiful thought. So let us do all we can now to make sure we're there. And let us put faith, 100% faith, in Jesus. For as Acts 24:15 says, there will be a resurrection.